Hey Waffle Gang, I do hope you're well. My name is Mark and today we're checking out some more relationship stories, and if you do love a Reddit story, why not consider hitting that like, subscribe, maybe that notification bell too. Let's crack on with today's first story. Much love guys. Now this first story comes from Savings Carpenter 249 and says, am I the asshole for telling my parents they were horrible and saying they shouldn't have more kids? Hi, first time posting. I, 16 male, was born when my parents were very young. Like my mother was 16 and my father was 17. Both families decided it would be the best for me if effectively my maternal grandparents raised me and my bio parents got to live their lives. That is not to say I didn't know who my actual parents were. This is not one of those situations like in movies where the mother pretends the daughter's child is actually her own. I and everyone knew who my progenitors were. My father moved away when he was 18, but my mother remained in my grandparents' house until she was 23, and I was around 7. But that doesn't mean we were close. She always treated me more like an annoying little brother rather than a son. She didn't like spending time with me, never attended any of my school functions or showed interest in my academic work or took me to do any fun activities. Whenever I was talking about my day, she would roll her eyes or change the topic to shut me up. When she moved out, I barely saw her. She just came to family gatherings and said an awkward hi and not even look at me. It hurt, even if by that point I already considered my grandparents to be more my parents than her. My father was still living away. They weren't together at this point, but would come once or twice a year to visit his own family around the holidays, and always made it a point to visit me and take me to do some sort of fun activities, like going to the cinema or my favorite restaurant. Things like that, but to me, he was more like a strange man than a dad, because when I compared him to my friends' fathers who picked them up from school every day and went to their games and played with them on the weekends, I didn't understand why this man who I saw maybe twice a year was supposed to be the same. Anyway, fast forward to a year ago. My father moved back to the same city where we live. He tried to hang out with me more often, but I wasn't really interested, although sometimes I complied. I don't hate him, I just don't know him. I even had a bedroom in his apartment, which is cool because he lives in the center of the city. Behind everyone's back, both my parents had started to hang out, and a couple of months later they announced they were dating. It was a shock. They asked me to move in with them to my father's apartment, which I refused, but they argued that we could finally be a family. I was about to start an argument on them when my grandma just said that changing school districts would be very inconvenient and I could lose all my friends, and the situation de-escalated by itself. Although my parents didn't let go of the idea. My parents asked me to spend more time with them, and this was particularly frustrating because even though I never had any tension with my father, I most definitely do with my mother. I don't like being around her, and she's treated me poorly my whole life. I feel like she's now only trying to save face because she knows my dad wants me there. Now onto the issue. Last week they both came into my grandparents' house. They announced they were going to buy a house nearby in the neighborhood so that I can finally move in with them. I immediately said no, and when they said that changing schools would no longer be an issue, I found myself in a corner. I said that was never the problem, and that I just simply don't see them as my parents and don't want to live with them. That's when they dropped the bomb on us. Not only they wanted me to move in with them so we could be a family, but my mother was pregnant, so we're going to be a bigger family even. I was shocked and I blew my lid on them. I told them that they were the worst parents in the world and that they abandoned me for 16, and now they were going to bring another child into the world and do the same to them. And they never apologized for treating me like garbage and like a mistake they made and making me feel like I was supposed to exist and dumping me to be other people's responsibility. And only now they feel like they care, they want to be my family. My mother screamed back at me telling me I was a brat and that she wasn't going to make the same mistakes twice, raising a second baby. I told her she never raised me to begin with, and my father said they were young and trying to do the best they could. Well, guess what? The best you could was pretty effing bad. I stormed out and was sobbing. I've been very depressed for the last week. They've both called and texted since, but I ignored them. My grandparents agree with me that I shouldn't move and that my parents shouldn't expect me to be all loving and forgiving after how they've treated me. However, they believe they are starting a new chapter of their lives now that they are more mature and stable, which I guess leaves me behind. I've also had time to think. I'm the same age my mother was when she had me, and what a huge responsibility that must have been. However, I still can't forgive them. Am I the asshole for the way I reacted to the news? And OP did respond to some of the comments below. So Thunderpants says, first, I'm sorry you've got shitty parents. Not the arsehole as far as what you said. They needed to hear it. Your grandparents are your real parents. They stepped up when you were let down. And OP said, I want to share this post with my grandparents because honestly, the most common response has been how great they are, and honestly, they are. I love them so much and I tell them all the time, but I feel like it's never enough. And it's always great to take the time to tell people you are most grateful to how much you appreciate them and how much of an impact they've had in your life. Logical Text says, not the arsehole. Sounds like your grandparents are raising a smart and well-balanced person. For the sake of your future mental health, get to know your parents very slowly and from a distance. Observe their behaviors with one another and separately. Does your dad treat you differently when your mother is around? Does she treat you differently when he is around? All of this is key to your choices. From your explanation, there doesn't seem to be a reason to change your living arrangements. They are simply closer to your home and you can all get to know one another better. Your grandparents probably have some deeper input but don't want to persuade you. Ask their opinions. They clearly care deeply. OP says, my father really wants us to be a happy family. When the three of us are together, you can see him beaming with joy, like he can't stop himself from smiling and making comments like, this is everything one could possibly want, and stuff like that. I think probably my mother has sold him a completely different story on what our relationship was growing up when he left, and he doesn't seem to notice the tension between me and her. As far as my living arrangements, they would have to pull me screaming out of my grandparents. They signed away their parental rights sometime after I was born, so I don't think they even have a legal foot to stand on if it came to that, but I just hope that they can come to respect my decision. Marble Free says, not the arsehole, and I'm so glad you have your grandparents in your life. When you're ready, consider meeting your bio father alone at a coffee shop and let him know that your bio mother made it clear your entire life. She never wanted you and definitely didn't want a relationship with you. If he wants to build a relationship and friendship, it will have to be between just the two of you. I honestly would be worried your mother, besides wanting to look good to your father by claiming a relationship with you, is also looking for free childcare. She seems extremely selfish. OP says, I was thinking that too. I want to have a conversation with my father mostly about my concerns about my mother and what to do moving forward. The more I think about this, the more I'm scared about my little sibling because I'm not sure how my mother would take care of them. And I just kind of feel in this situation, OP's so young and having to deal with this as well must be, I can't imagine what OP is going through in their mind. But you're totally valid in feeling the way that you're feeling. And I think personally that you should stay where you are, of course, with your grandparents. You're safe there. They love you. They're taking care of you. And I just kind of feel like this is on them if they want to try and make it up to you. That's totally on them. Even if you want them in your lives, you don't even have to accept that right now. They absolutely need to respect your choices in this. But there was a lot of people concerned about OP if they was ever to make that decision to move in with them, that they're going to be some kind of like free babysitter, caregiver type of role in the family. But OP does update their post and says, hi everyone, thank you for all the responses. It really helped a lot. It's been an emotional couple of days and a lot has happened. My mind is a little bit dispersed, but I felt like I owed you all an update. And I'm going to try and be as clear as possible. For those of you who didn't read my original post, the gist of it basically was that my 16 male parents had me when they were very young, 16 female and 17 male. They got separated and left me to be raised by my maternal grandparents. My mother was around but couldn't care less about me, but my dad went away and we had a very sporadic but positive contact. Now he's come back, they're back together, they're having a new baby and want me back into their lives. I refused and told them they are horrible and shouldn't have kids, which brings us to the original post. First of all, I shared my post with my grandparents and they were so surprised by it. They were very happy to see how many people commented about how amazing they are, and I, in turn, also took the opportunity to tell them how much I loved them and how much I appreciated everything they had ever done for me. They are my real parents, and nothing is ever going to change that. There were some tears and they told me they loved me and how proud they were of me. They never thought of themselves as doing something special or worth so much appreciation. They were just taking care of family, but they are the best. After that, I started trying to collect my thoughts and arranging a meeting with my father to discuss the things that were bothering me. Why did he abandon me? Why did he think he could just reappear into my life like that? That I wasn't going to move in with them, that I didn't consider them my parents because they never acted as such, etc. We met at a park and he went to hug me, but I stepped away and looked hurt, and he just apologized for what happened the other day and went into this speech about how we could try to transition into living together part-time and respect my boundaries, and I went blank. I didn't expect for him to talk, so I pulled out my phone and just showed him the post I made the other day, and he started reading it in silence. After a while he read it all and some responses, and he just asked me if this was true. I said yes, and he asked me if I had questions he would answer honestly. I asked what happened when I was born, and he told me that when my mother got pregnant, all options were laid on the table. Abortion, adoption, marriage, Gramps taking care of me. Only one of my parents taking me in. My mother was deadly scared of adoption because some religious group had told them some horror stories about dead babies and mothers being killers or some BS like that, so she wanted to give me up for adoption, but my father refused. He couldn't bear the idea of having his child living somewhere and never seeing him again. So he proposed to taking me in as a sole caretaker, leaving his college plans to stay in our city. But his parents weren't thrilled with his plan and pushed him to go to college so that he could provide economically for me. They offered themselves to take care of me, but they were significantly older than my maternal grandparents. He was an only child, and at the time they were just 40, whereas my father has 5 older siblings, and his parents were already in their 60s. And since taking care of me and taking care of my mother for a while, as well as my maternal grandparents, decided it was the best decision for them to take me. Also, immediately after I was born, my mother had postnatal depression, and the doctors advised them to not completely remove them from her side, or more damage to our relationship could be done, and my grandparents wanted her to eventually love me as a son. One thing to note about my father that I didn't mention in my original post is that even when he was in college, he worked part-time to pay child support. And once he started working in a law firm, he started sending more money to my grandparents and set up a college fund for me, which was news for me. My grandparents don't know about this, but my mother does, so I don't know what to do with this information. My father thought of me all the time he spent away and believed he had left me with a happy family and that he was working to give me a better life, but I followed his life through social media. He went to parties, vacations, had girlfriends and did lots of fun stuff and barely had any contact with me. I asked him why couldn't he have made more of an effort to be a part of my life. Like, I understand if he needed to study in another city and work there, but there's no effort to call or text. Coming once a year just doesn't cut it. He looked ashamed and apologized to me. I took advice that I saw a lot of comments here that I would forgive but not forget, that maybe we can build a relationship going forward, but it will always be marked by his actions in the past. If he hasn't been my dad for 16 years, he can't start now. He seemed sad but accepted my conditions. I then told him about my concerns about my mother, told him how bad she treated me as a child, that I did not think she would be a good mother for my sibling, and that I wanted to go low/no contact with her. He said that after he left for college and they broke up, he would call her once in a while to check up on things, but that quickly ended. When he came back, she explained to him that her and I had a great bond, and even though we didn't see each other daily, it was because I was in those teenage years, and that she loved spending time with me and she was a very hands-on mum. I told him all that was a lie, and that she never cared for me. He obviously read stuff from my post, but I also told him other things, like when she would ask my grandparents babysitting money for taking care of me, or that she would call me annoying or disgusting to my face when we still lived together, and that severely messed me up. He was very serious and said he would talk to her, but he really would not allow a child to be treated like that, and he was sorry for letting that happen to me. Lastly, he told me I would have a bedroom in his house, but he understood perfectly that I would never live there. He was quite emotional at this point and got choked up at this point when he asked me even if I didn't consider him my father or consider his baby my sibling. I said of course, and that I planned to be a very active part in their life if I could. He started crying and asked if he could hug me, and this time I agreed. I'm happy about the resolution of our conversation, and I really do believe he will be a good parent for my sibling. Once again, thanks to everyone who commented and took interest in my story. I don't know if I'll update again. And I'm glad that you did have that meeting with your father in the end, and it sounds like things are, that they might move slowly, but they sound like they're moving in a better direction. But at the same time, I still can't help be worried about what your mother's actions will be from this point onwards. The fact that she went to your father and lied about your past, saying, she was a very hands-on mum, and that you were just being like a typical teenager kind of thing. But whatever happens going forward, OP, I truly do wish you the best. But now I'm going to turn this one to you guys. What do you guys make of this situation? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. And let's move on to another story. And our next story does come with an update. It's from Motorbike370. And before we do get into the story, I just want to give you a warning that it does contain talk of death of a parent and child neglect as well. So if you do want to skip the story, please feel free to do so. Timestamps are always down in the description and along the timeline below. Thank you. And it's titled, Am I the Arsehole for not inviting any of my siblings to my wedding? So I am 23 female, getting married in a few months. And I have a few significantly older siblings, 34 female, 36 male, and 38 male, and 38 male. All of them are now married, and since I was a teen, when they got married and they had a child-free wedding, I was not invited to any of their weddings. My older sibling first had a child-free wedding, and then the others decided to follow. When my oldest brother got married, I was 10, so sure, I kind of get not inviting me. I was still extremely upset. My oldest brother got married to a woman I really love, and I can't even witness it. The other brother got married when I was 12, so again, not inviting a 12-year-old, but I was a very well-behaved child and again, his sibling. My sister got married when I was 15. At first, she didn't want a child-free wedding, but all of the family members convinced her because, oh my god, it's so refreshing to be in a wedding where children don't bring havoc. So she decided for the cut to be 16. And when I asked, can I be a one exception since I'm 15, and your sister? She said no with a very serious tone. If we make an exception for you, what about other children? It's not fair. I got upset and screamed that what is not fair is not participating in any of my siblings' weddings. My parents got upset with me and grounded me. And lastly, my brother got married when I was 17. At that point, I didn't care. I knew there was going to be a child-free wedding and that once again I'm not invited. I didn't ask or beg. My step-cousin, who just turned 18, just made the cut and I didn't. Well, as I said, I didn't care. Sent a quick congrats and that's it. My parents got furious on why I didn't even congratulate them. I just ignored them and spent all the time in my room with my now soon-to-be husband. Since I'm getting married, I decided none of them are going to be there, since I wasn't allowed to be at theirs too. When they didn't get the invitations, they all came to my house and demanded to know why they didn't get one. I simply explained, you didn't want me in your wedding, I don't want you in mine. I explained how hurt that I was not to be able to see any of my siblings get married, and they should experience the same. They said that weddings had alcohol, so they didn't want any young, impressionable kids there. And I said all I wanted was to be included in the weddings part. I didn't care about the after party. Mum then started screaming again about how unfair I am and how she wants all of her kids to be together on that beautiful day. Ironic. But I am not backing down. I firmly believe in not inviting them. Am I the arsehole? And we're starting the comments with Dry Sandwich, who says not the arsehole. It was cruel that they excluded you. The comments about alcohol are ridiculous. It's not hard to keep alcohol away from children at events. They're making excuses. It's fair enough to have a child-free wedding. It's not only that young children may disrupt the event, it's also about cost. Including children can mean having to hire a larger, more expensive venue and providing a lot more food, and catering is expensive. I've never heard of anyone excluding a close member of family though. You were a sibling, not some high school friend's kid. It was a big deal that you were excluded. It was inappropriate and weird, and it's understandable that the result is you don't feel close to your siblings. Let your mother screech. It's not her wedding. You don't have to listen to her. Tell her she has communicated how she feels and the decision has been made. Then put the phone down or leave the room. If she wants her kids to be together, she had plenty of opportunities to make sure you were included and chose not to. And that is pretty much the gist of most of the comments there as well, saying, it's fair enough to have a child-free wedding, but it's very, very weird behavior which they've exhibited in this one. What thing that really jumped out to me as well, that they kept changing the ages, they kept upping it. As OP got older, they kept upping their limit age at the same time, still excluding OP when they were 17 years old. But 10 days later, OP comes in with their update and says, they didn't approve the update, so I'll post it here. Hope someone sees it. We talked the day after I made the post. I said that the only way I'm going to invite them is if they explain absolutely everything. Otherwise, no invitation. After some weird looks and silence, the truth came out. I am their cousin. My father's brother was raising me alone and died, so I was raised by my uncle. They do not know who my mother is. I was young, required a lot of attention, wasn't their sibling, so they kind of distanced themselves from me. My brother said that he even hated me sometimes. My parents sat there ashamed for never telling me. My cousin just looked awkward. I just left. We eloped. So after all the drama, we talked and realized we're doing the whole wedding thing because we thought the other wanted it. We're not against the idea of flashy weddings, but a calm day with just closest people was closest to our hearts. So we did that. Just us and some of our friends. We're keeping the money for our dream country to visit. My parents had the audacity to get angry that there was no celebration, but I don't care, to be honest. It was a day for us. That's it. I hope the update was not disappointing. Special thanks for everyone writing me messages telling us that we were too immature to get married. So this family lies to OP their entire life, and then they're like wondering why they're not being invited to this wedding and complaining about it. What the fuck kind of logic is that? But I was super glad that OP did add that they had the wedding of their dreams, and it wasn't about anyone else, it was just about them and their closest people. And I absolutely love that, and I hope you do continue to just keep the closest people in your lives and the people that love you just as much, because you deserve that, OP. But now, I'm going to turn this one to you guys. What do you guys make of this situation? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. And just a huge thank you from the bottom of my heart for getting involved in today's stories. Your love, your support, your time always means the absolute world to me. So thank you so much for being involved, and hopefully we'll see you in the next one. Take care and much love.